Welcome back to the Unique Hospitality Podcast. I'm your host, Connor Schwab. Today, we're trying something a little different, and very sadly, I won't have my trusty co-host and the real founder and brains behind the show, Nick Perslow. He won't be joining today because he's so wrapped up getting the Posh sites launched and finishing the money raise. So he's only able to do about one a month. So I'll be doing one solo each month to try to keep the content flowing and coming to you guys and helping you launch your own businesses. So yeah, we're excited about that and keeping things going. Thanks to all our listeners for joining us in the new year 2025. We've got a great episode lined up for today that I'm very excited about. As someone who went to school in California and spent a lot of time in Northern California, about 7 years, there's not a lot of glamping or unique stay in the Bay Area or in Tahoe or in Yosemite. And today we're going to be having on Ken Barber, the founder of Wildhaven. They had their pilot location in Sonoma, California, one of the first, and really, yeah, I think there's only a couple other new locations popping up there, but one of the dominant players in that market. And then they'll be adding a second and much larger location in Yosemite. Actually, they have already added it. It opened a year ago. They have their first season under their belt with 40 units. And I believe they're in the process of starting a raise to finish that build to go from 40 to about 70 units and add some amenities. So I'm excited to dive in with him about that. So really excited to hear from kind of a homegrown Californian glamping business who's working on their second location. And I've spoken with Ken a couple times and offered some consulting and on some of their expansion and projects they were looking for. So I'm pretty familiar with him and his brand. And I really like Ken and his partner, Brian. They're like very sharp, super friendly. They are really good at the details, but they also have a good macro perspective on what's going on in the industry. So I think he's going to be a really engaging listener. So I'm excited to dive in with him. Without further ado, here's Ken. Ken, welcome to the show. So glad to have you.
Thanks for having me here, Connor.
Of course. Yeah, we wanted to really kick things off in 2025 with a bang. And I really do love and admire what you've done with Wildhaven. So I'm excited to dive into things today. I did want to read a couple things off just to get us kicked off to paint a picture for the listeners. But did Wildhaven start 5 years ago?
Yes, June 2020.
Okay. Yeah, so their first location in Sonoma, I was just looking at their reviews. They have 270 Google reviews of 4.7 stars, which is phenomenal. And their newer Yosemite location that's only been open less than a year has 117 Google reviews with 4.8 stars, which is even more phenomenal.
Yeah.
And then I was looking at your guys' Instagram, which is beautiful, and you have almost 50,000 followers. So the response from your guests and from your customers and online audience, you seem to be getting some really strong traction and people like what you're doing. So excited to dive into what's in the secret sauce. I guess before we dive into your personal story and kind of how you got to Wildhaven, maybe you could just give us a quick overview of some of the basics of where the business and the brand are at now.
Sure. Yeah, our goal is, I think, a similar goal to a lot of glamping organizations. We're just trying to make it as easy as possible to spend a comfortable night outdoors and a memorable night outdoors in nature, get more people outdoors. We opened our first location in June 2020. We offer, modern tents and cabins. So we don't do the tree houses or domes or anything. It's just tents and cabins. And we also want to create the experience, right? It's not just a place to sleep. So we've got the hotel-like amenities, the clean bathrooms and the Wi-Fi and the coffee service and the wine tasting and yoga classes and, extra things like that to just really make sure people are enjoying the outdoors. And then we opened the second location just outside of Yosemite National Park in this really cool gold rush town called Mariposa. And that was in April. So like you said, just less than a year. And that one is much bigger in size, and it has even nicer tents and nicer cabins. And we took everything we learned from the first one and applied to the second location. And we can get to this later, but we're also expanding and trying to look for a third location now.
Amazing. Well, I look forward to diving into that. How many units are at Sonoma and Yosemite?
The Sonoma one has 44 right now, 40 tents and 4 cabins. And then Yosemite has 37 right now, which is 25 tents and 12 cabins. And on that property, we're expanding, and we're going to be adding 30 more units, a mix of nicer tents and nicer cabins.
Got it. And is there like a typical ADR that you've seen for those locations, just to give the listeners an idea of the price point we're working with?
Yeah, it's all over the place based on day of week and month and in unit type, but we really target around 150 to 300 for a tent, and actually even right now we have $99 tents, so it can go that low on midweek off season, and then cabins will be 250 to maybe 450 at the top. So we call it internally mid market. That's where we want to be. We don't want to go for exorbitant luxury. We want to make it affordable, but we also want to make sure we have all the basics that you need for a comfy experience.
Awesome. And how's demand and like occupancy been?
It's it's interesting to comparing the two properties. I thought they would be the same because it's glamping, but Sonoma has its own demand curve and demand path, I guess, throughout the year. And May through, all the way through late in November, it's really popular in Sonoma because of the mild winters and the fall harvest season. And we're right on a river there. So the demand is really strong once the river is in play. And it goes, like I said, all the way through the holidays. And Yosemite, it's, starts about waterfall season, April or so, a little earlier. And it ends a little sooner. Because the park gets it gets a little colder, so it definitely is it's different based on the property.
Is Yosemite expected to be open year round?
Yeah. Both properties actually will be open year round, and in both properties we take down a few tents when it gets too cold, and we just have noticed that people migrate more towards the cabins those times of year.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you for that. And would love to just dive into your personal story and kind of your background and how you ended up getting into the glamping space.
Yeah, I love the question because no one has a normal path in, right? It's such a new industry, and maybe mine is similar to other people who are listening right now, but I have a 20-year career in marketing at ad agencies and tech firms, and I tried a startup for a couple of years, and then but all the same time I was big into the outdoors, hiking, camping, kayaking, skiing. I moved to Boulder because I was really into the outdoors, and it got even more intense there. And then I moved to San Francisco, met my business partner. We both wanted to start a company. We knew it was in the outdoors because that's where our passion was. And we didn't know what. Of course, we thought it's an app. And we actually just sat in front of a whiteboard and tried to design what an app would do in the outdoor space. And it became clear to us after talking to a lot of people, especially in the city, that it wasn't an app that people needed. It was help getting outdoors, like almost physical help. So they first needed more places to go camping. There's just a shortage of them in California. So we realized we needed to open up a physical site. And then people needed help. They didn't have the experience maybe of camping. They didn't grow up doing it. They didn't have all the gear. And so they needed a more supportive camping experience where things were taken care of for them. And so that was kind of the light bulb for us that we needed to open up, a supportive camping location, which is basically glamping.
I had such a similar aha moment when I was living in San Francisco, and that was kind of where my glamping dreams started for those exact same reasons. It was really hard to get outside and camp, and that was due to a number of reasons. One, lack of location availability. I mean, if you didn't have a reservation, you probably needed to drive 4+ hours to try to get a campsite
Yeah.
from San Francisco, and you're fighting rush hour if you're leaving Friday and Sunday.
Yeah.
And then, when you're living in a tiny San Francisco apartment, to have all the camping gear that you need is really difficult. And to have a vehicle, if you need a 4x4 vehicle or a vehicle that's going to be able to fit, 4 friends and tents and gear and stuff or coolers, like it just all of a sudden, if you're living in a city, like getting out is really difficult. And that's one of the beautiful things that glamping solves is it really does open it up for particularly the urban population to access it.
Yep. And that's what we saw too. And our locations are both just outside of the same urban location. We're an hour and 15 minutes north of San Francisco at our Sonoma location, and we're about 3 hours east of the city. And we learned a lot from AutoCamp, which is a glamping leader, and they positioned their properties just outside of major metro areas, 2 to 3 hours, because those are the people that need it most. The people that are overworked, stressed out, and like you said, don't have the space for the gear or the knowledge or the vehicle. So that's our strategy.
So tell me about when you decided, hey, I need a physical location. What happened next? How did you find your Sonoma property, and was there other ones you looked at before that?
Yeah. It's a fun tale because we didn't know what we were doing, and we actually started by buying access to a property ownership database and finding the names of people who own land and mailing them letters and saying, "Hey, we'd like to open up a glamping business on your property." Naive, looking backwards, pretty impressive also that we just went for that. It's completely the wrong way to do it. There's things called permitting and zoning that squashed that pretty quickly. And then we realized, maybe who owns land, who has the land, and can we talk to them? So we approached the California State Park System and said, can we run a glamping business on your land? They have the land. It's gorgeous. That's has its own challenges, and we actually got pretty far in that path, and then it didn't work out for a couple of reasons. And then we tried even land trusts, county parks. We even went to the national parks because they run the Golden Gate National Recreation Area, and they've got lots of land. We tried the BLM, Bureau of Land Management. We contacted PG&E. They actually have lots of lands for their electricity generation, and they have campgrounds. So we just kind of threw everything out there and tried to find who had the land that met our criteria and that we could, use to run a business. And the way it ended up working was old-fashioned. It was realtors. We engaged realtors and said, can you go find us commercially zoned property anywhere in California that, met our criteria, and started touring the state, and they eventually presented us with our first property.
Wow. Amazing. If you were to go back, well, I guess, how has your property search and identification process evolved, from today as you look for site 3 to what it was, 5 or 6 years ago, I guess. Yeah. What are you focused on now? Where are you putting your time and efforts?
Wow. Some things are identical, are the same, consistent, which is we knew we needed to be in a place where people are already going for recreation in nature, so we didn't want to kind of make them go to a place they're not already going. So that's, Russian River, where our first place is. It's been a popular resort area for a while. So, Yosemite, that's an easy one. So we knew we wanted to be there. We knew it's 2 to 3 hours at most from a major city. The zoning is something we didn't quite know how important it was. So that's one where we won't even look at a property that it isn't already zoned recreation. It is possible to what's it called, rezone, and go that route. And other glamping places have done that, and add 3 to 5 years onto your timeline, probably, if you're lucky. So now we're only looking at the zoned ones. There's also kind of a sweet spot, we think, for number of units that we didn't realize. And we think that's probably, really 60 to 100, um, depending on your ADR and even demand. So we're looking at places that have that capability. Flat, flat is more important than we thought. It makes things a lot easier for construction. Even though when it's not flat, like our second property, it has amazing views. So those are some things that we're honing in on what the best fit is for us.
Awesome. So when you found the Sonoma property, and correct me if I'm wrong, so it's not within the Sonoma city limits, but it is within Sonoma County. Is that correct?
It's in it's in the town of Healdsburg, and I think it's just outside of like incorporated Healdsburg. So we're still in the city, but I think we're just on the outskirts. Um, yeah.
Do you know which county it is?
Oh, it's still Sonoma County. Yeah.
Okay. So I heard through the grapevine that Sonoma County almost was just you just couldn't get almost any new builds approved. Like it was, near impossible. They put the kibosh on almost everything. I guess what was your experience, or what was that process of getting your entitlements and permits done?
It's very, very, very difficult. Yeah. Sonoma County is super strict, and there's the environmental angle, where they have a lot to worry about to protect, the watershed and other natural resources. We ended up actually finding land that was owned by a local Indian tribe, a Native American tribe, and which actually has its own permitting. So we went through a more streamlined process than the county. It also had a lot of difficulties and hurdles going that route. But so we didn't go through that process on our first property. On our second property, different county, but absolutely, it was still very, very difficult. It was, a year of just getting, probably 6 months to get your studies done to be able to apply to the county, and then a year more for the county to approve you. And then in the state of California, all campgrounds are governed by a state agency. So then you have to go up to the state agency to get your construction permits. And that is, a year or two. And they don't really know where glamping fits into the code in many times. So they're confused, and there's a lot of back and forth. So it's just be prepared for many years and lots of obstacles. I was going to say setbacks, but
From when you identified the property to when you broke ground on construction, how long did that take for both sites?
so the first site was a dream in hindsight, because it was a closed RV park and campground. And first of all, that you never find that, but we happened to find one where it was closed. So we reopened it and cleaned it up, but all the infrastructure was there, roads, buildings. We brought in the accommodations and gave it the facelift, and so that was fast. That was actually 6 months to just do that.
That might be a California record.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think.
yeah. So we had a lot of supporting factors, as I mentioned, that who owned the land and the permitting and the fact that it just needed to be cleaned up. And we also started with only 10 units. So we kind of aimed low and then kind of built up as things went. I got better. Yosemite was 3 years. 3 years, and a year of that was construction. 2 of that was permitting. The construction probably was the main construction was about 6 months of putting in the roads and all the infrastructure. And then after that, for us, our cabins, we did this on purpose, but our cabins came in on wheels, on trailers. It's a lot faster and easier than building it on site. It's easier to permit too. And then tents and platforms don't take that long to create.
What was the Yosemite property zoning?
Recreation, commercial recreation. Yeah.
Great.
And yeah, each county calls it something different, right? And so you have to know that. That's the advice I give to a lot of people. It's call the county permitting and kind of see how they zone it, what's allowed, and what their process is. I wish it was more uniform.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I mean, you really executed to get two projects done, in pretty tough markets in California in 6 months and 2 years is that's really impressive. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of people who haven't been able to do what you just said even once. So yeah, very
Yeah,
impressive.
thank you.
With so when you're starting the first Wildhaven Sonoma site and you're ideating and creating the brand and the concepts, what was the customer experience, or I guess what was the why or the mission statement behind it? I think you answered this a little bit,
Mhm.
but yeah, what was the why and the mission statement behind why guests would come to your property?
I think the answer is that the summary level answer is in our name, the name that we chose, which took a while of research and thinking. Is the wild and the haven. It's two words, it's two concepts, and then one name blends the two things together. So the wild, of course, is just well, for us. It's the wilds of nature. It's what we need in our life. All the benefits of being outdoors, and then the haven part is the support, the safety, the everything you need aspect of it. So our mission was to blend those two things into one experience where your foot is in both worlds. You've got the thrill of being outdoors, and you've got the awe-inspiring moments of staring up at the skies and having a fire and dipping in the river and sleeping outdoors. But then you feel comfortable, you feel safe, you've got support all around you, and it's just easy to do. So you're more likely to do it. That was our goal.
Has that concept stayed the same, now that you're on your second site and 5 years in, or has it changed?
That's a good question. We're still offering both of those benefits. I'd say that people were learning that our guests like a little more of the comfort than we thought. So we're adding more of the haven part, if you want. Our these new units I mentioned in Yosemite are going to be nicer, bigger. Tents are going to have ensuite bathrooms. There's more of the comforts of home than we initially planned for. Some of the cabins are going to be extra big with you know um, built-in gas fire pits on the deck, and just really going up a notch. So I think that's where we're heading a little without, but we never want to be. We actually say this in our. We never use the word luxury in our marketing. We don't want to be a luxury destination. We're getting really close to that word, but we were trying to be, something that's a little more accessible and a little more, just everything you need to be comfortable and safe, but not the extra pampering that some other glamping places offer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And I love the name Wildhaven. And when you explain it that way, it's a great name. So kudos to you. I guess that's the marketing background coming into effect with the thoughtfulness behind that.
Yeah, yeah.
And for the first site, how'd you fund the project or capitalize it?
The first site was because it was a campground that just needed to be fixed up, facelift, and then buy the accommodations. And then we started small. It was a small group of investors that provided us. It wasn't even, it's maybe $500,000, and we used that to buy our accommodations and make the property improvements and get the marketing going and the branding going. And then we funded more from revenue after that. So we were fortunate there with a smaller upfront investment.
Did those investors come from your personal network, or did you have to kind of go out and hit the phones or call around?
It was there. I mean, they're angel investors. They were from our network. They weren't people we already knew, but once we started reaching out looking for people who, investors who loved nature or who already had real estate investments in their portfolio, and they understood real estate. And yeah, we were able to find one or two, and then they actually introduced us to more, and then that's all we needed.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Did you do any financing for phase one of Sonoma?
No, there's no extra debt we took on. Didn't go to the banks. It was just our investors, our small group of passive investors.
Wow. And it was only 500,000 that was necessary to do the phase one 10 units and buy the property.
Yeah, there's a little more for working capital, and there's a little more that it's a lease arrangement, so you had to put some down for the lease, but just to get the property going, it's not that bad if you're just bringing in the accommodations and doing some cosmetic changes. That's no roads to build, no reception to build. Some glamping places have $10 million clubhouses. Yeah, we didn't have that for that first property.
Wow. Wow. Good for you guys. That's really impressive way to stretch the budget and get it done. And so, and then presumably you did a phase two or multiple phases to go from 10 to 40 units.
Yeah, yeah, that was rolled out about every 3 months or so. We were cautious. We wanted to see what the response would be, so we rolled out 10 to start. They all had one bed in them, one queen bed, and the response was amazing. And part of that was because it was June 2020, and the world just opened up, and people were allowed to leave San Francisco and come north. And so we ordered 10 more by I think by the middle of the summer, and then 10 more by the end of by the fall. And then each time we learned and we bought bigger tents and we added new features to them, and we decided we saw the demand was really strong from families, for example. So we decided we really need 2 queen tents, and those became popular. So, and then we started getting requests for, well, I have 3 kids or 4 kids, where can I stay? And so we said, oh, we need a solution for this. So we developed bunk bed tents and had them custom designed by the manufacturer and figured out how to fit everything in and how to price them. And then we rolled that out. So that was the iterative process we went through.
Awesome. Who's the manufacturer for you guys' tents?
We've gone through 3 different ones. That was part of the iterative process. We started with Davis, met them at the Glamping Summit, the one in Colorado. That was really helpful for us to go to. I'd recommend to anyone who's listening who wants to start, go to that show. And because
100%.
yeah,
Totally agree.
we found so many of our early suppliers and partners there. But yeah, Davis was there. We liked what they were doing. They were from Colorado. Met with them, ordered a couple, loved them. Then we switched to another company called Reliable, and then we tried. Then we went to Denver Tent Company, another tent company from Colorado. Yeah, and then went to Reliable, and then went back to Davis.
So who are you using moving forward?
Davis. Yeah.
All right, love it.
Yeah.
And so some big lessons learned were changing up the configuration capacity. Would you say that you have a typical customer? Like, are you catering to families? Are you catering to like romantic couples or young professionals, or is it kind of agnostic and catering to everybody?
We're trying to cater to everyone because they each come at different times. We thought when we started it would be mostly couples, and that's why we started off with the 1 queen tents, and then families were kind of a surprise, audience for us. Families come on weekends and in the summertime, so we still need to have couples that usually will come, are more likely to come during the week. And then there's remote workers that also help us support during the week. And then groups also give us the midweek support and off season. So it is a challenge. I'm the marketing person here you want to attract all audiences, but you don't want to have, a bunch of different messages and a bunch of different offers out there. So we're trying to reach everyone, but for different reasons.
Mm-hmm. That is really interesting. I often caution people. I'd be curious to get your thoughts as someone who's doing it and someone who's a marketing guy. Is I often caution people from being agnostic and trying to have a property or a customer experience that caters to all groups, because their needs are so different. And the example I usually give is, when you're creating your website or you're, uploading content to your Instagram, if you're uploading a bunch of photos with families and kids and there's, like a playground or whatever, or if you're uploading content of romantic couples with a bottle of wine around the
Yes.
fire in the peace and quiet, like those can be a little bit, diametrically opposed in terms of what the customer is looking for their experience on the property. So I usually say sometimes that's a bit risky, but you seem to be executing. Was just curious of your thoughts.
It's tricky. I think people make, we provide the general experience in the location. They make their experience out of it. If a solo traveler wants to come, if it is a big family, if it's a couple, everyone can find their kind of their own experience at our property. That's how I look at it. A challenge for us is, how do you lay out the tent types so that you don't have a lot of, I guess, mismanaged expectations, right? So I have a whole bunch of my 2 queen tents that the families love. And at first they were interspersed between the 1 queen tents. And I'd have couples come up and complain that, the kids from the neighboring tent were running across back and forth in front of their tent. And, they thought it was going to be a romantic spot. So we had to move some tents around and set expectations and enforce quiet hours. So I think it can be done. It just needs, you have to set expectations and, don't go heavy into one area, which then you're going to disappoint some, other people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. That is super interesting. Thinking about site three, is there a specific customer that you're focused on, or is it continuing to be agnostic or dependent on the market that you go into?
I think it's going to be more agnostic. And I think probably no matter where we go, it may be different for someone else. Their families will be an audience. Absolutely. It just makes so much sense why glamping works for families. And when I started the business, I didn't have any children, and I do have one now. And it's so obvious that you just want the simplest things taken care of. You want, to have that time back to spend with your family versus setting up your tent and taking care of all the details. So families will be there. Couples, it just makes sense. Groups of friends are actually pretty big for both of our properties. Groups of friends meaning like 2 or 3 friends that go together. Like that's road trips or something. That's pretty big. Yeah, remote workers, groups. I think everyone has. I want to make sure everyone has the ability to have our enjoy our experience.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. Well, it's awesome that you've been able to kind of keep the balance, and keep it like a good experience for both. So that's awesome. And so were you purely using, profit and revenue from the business to, go from the 10 to 40 sites at Sonoma?
Yes, yeah. Some of it was, we raised a little more than that 500,000 that I mentioned, for growth, but most of it was we kept costs really low those first years. We started small, um, we yeah, and then we use that to grow.
Oh, yeah, amazing. Like, yeah, what a great strategy and the way that worked out for you. So when you started to, when you were starting and still like what as a marketing guy, what's been most successful for you in getting the word out, getting customers in the door, finding out about your property and booking?
Yes, I'd say search engine optimization the first, as the first place to start. People are already searching for glamping, and you want to make sure you're found. And that's, some basics of how to build a site and make sure you have your Google page set up and it's beautiful, because we have so many people coming in just from us appearing on a map when someone does a search for accommodations or campgrounds. So, SEO first, social media a close second. Our Instagram we started early on. We work with this amazing social media manager, and she taught us how to speak the language of social media and why it's so important for glamping. It's a visual product or a visual platform, and we have a visual product. So, we just had to get very beautiful photos and videos of what we were offering onto social media and let people share that. We have a very aspirational audience where they say like, oh, look, I want to do that someday, and so we just got to show them that this experience was out there.
So for capturing your content, are you going out with, an iPhone and doing that? Are you, is it your customers? Is it your customers doing that? Are you hiring professionals? Like how are you actually capturing the content that you're sharing?
It started with me. It started with me. But very quickly, one of the other pieces of why our marketing has performed so well is just our influencer strategy, our influencer relationships. We gave away a lot of free stays in our first year, where we just anyone who had an audience or was interested in the outdoors, we invited them to come stay, and they would shoot some content during their stay, and we would be able to use that, and it's just more effective marketing. And then if I'm just shooting empty tents, or I'm shooting one of my team in a tent. So
was there an influencer strategy? Like how did they find you? Did you find them? How did you structure that or make that happen?
It's both, and it has shifted though. Early on, I mean, we reached out to people, who is already talking about camping, who's already talking about glamping, who's already talking about fun things to do around San Francisco. There's a whole bunch of bloggers that talk about, cool hidden gems and fun experiences and staycation ideas, and that type of lifestyle bloggers and travel bloggers and nature bloggers. And you reach out to them and you say, first, you don't just blanket and ask everyone to come stay, but you look at their content, you see how it's being engaged with. Is it quality? Do people like it? And then you work out a relationship where they can come up and stay, and then, basically document the experience. And then they're professionals at this. And so, but it's changed because people have been finding us now. And it's a whole world of, people reaching out and saying, I'd like to collaborate with you. And we've gotten really good content that way.
Awesome. And most of that you have hired a social media manager in-house or a consultant, and they handle all that?
Yeah, it's an in-house person. They handle it. It's a lot of work. It's absolutely a lot of work. There's a lot of screening. There's a lot of sifting through the content, and then, ideally the same person can edit and splice together the content and put it into the formats that, really help our business. So we want to tell people, here's our amenities, and here's what our property looks like, and here's what's nearby, and here's some of the new promotions we have. And so it's an endless strategy towards getting the content and creating what you need to support the business. It never ends.
Is your social media person local, or do they do it all remote?
Local to San Francisco.
Okay, nice.
Yeah.
I know did you have to go through multiple social media people before you found this one, or is this the first person to shoe fit?
As you asked that question, I'm now realizing we got lucky, because same person we started with, and they've grown with the business. And so, yeah, but I have heard that it's challenging.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can just speak from some of my other businesses that it is very challenging. Particularly paid ad is even harder.
Yes.
But yeah, having someone, they have to be so intimately involved with your business. It's a full-time job just to think of creative things to talk about and share and stay up to date with what is working and trendy on social media. I mean, there's just a lot to it. So that's amazing that you found someone good and it's worked for you.
Yeah. So SEO, social media, influencer stays. We donate actually a lot of free stays to silent auctions, usually school auctions or other nonprofits. So that one helped out early. We did that a lot, and so it helped build awareness of us.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So those were really the big ones.
Tell us a little bit about SEO, and for the listeners, it's search engine optimization, and it's basically assesses the health and credibility of your website so that it ranks higher on Google results. But can you tell us about efforts that you made or strategies to improve that?
Yeah, there's it's kind of two, and I'm not a deep expert on this, but there's two general thoughts on this is, what can you do on your own website to make sure that Google can find it, understand it, and know what you're offering. And so there's, just labeling things the right way and the right content on your site, and enough content, and it needs to be updated often. Google looks at all these as factors of, is this relevant for a search? But probably the bigger one is off-site efforts that you would do, things that aren't on your site, but are links coming in from other sites. Google looks at that as a signal that, oh, this people trust this site because they're linking to it. And the quality of those sites that are linking into you are important as well. It's not just how many you have, but on one end of an extreme, if the New York Times or CNN.com or someone's linking in, okay, that's a credible site that's linking into you. So you want to. So early on, I reached out to a lot of journalists and said, would you like to, write a story about what we're offering here? It's a new experience. Early on, the angle was this is great for COVID, and come see what it's like and see how much people love glamping right now. And they write articles, they publish them. You always try to get a link in them to go back, and then Google sees those links as credibility, and they make your site appear when people do relevant searches.
That's amazing. And I often tell people in this space, like one of the most valuable skills is marketing and advertising. So it certainly helps that that was your background, and it certainly seems like it's been successful for you. How much of that are you? And I guess I'll speak anecdotally. Like, so Sandy Van's the company that I helped found. I would say they have an awesome product and equally an incredible marketing team. And they have a Wednesday marketing meeting, and it is 7 people. And we're not that big of a company. It's like a 20-person company. And most of those are consultants. But we have the SEO person, we have social media, we have content creation, we have paid social, we have publicity and outreach. And it's just like everyone working together, and it kind of like takes a village. And I guess, as how have you structured that from at the beginning, and how is it now?
Yeah, it's a great question. I've managed lots of marketing teams in my career, and it's always a team effort. It shouldn't be done as a silo. There's creativity benefits when you're together. There's also like proofreading. You want someone else to gut check things. I tried to do paid. A big driver for us is Google paid ads, as it is probably for everyone. We buy category terms, people looking for camping and glamping, and we buy, you want to buy your name. So that I try to do in-house, and that I quickly realize is its own whole world, and it's so difficult, and things are changing all the time. You need someone who's in it daily. So that one I outsourced to an agency that specializes in boutique hotels, and I've had really good luck with them. Social media, I already mentioned, I brought that one in-house. Everything else, email I do myself. Content creation is through social media. We hired a PR person. That's another person that should probably, early on, I think can be outsourced as a contractor, versus bringing that in-house. We're not that big enough right now to have. So that's another person that we bring in. And then there's just a lot of grunt work of just emailing people and finding who wants to talk about your product, and how can you convince them to just come learn about it. Mm-hmm. It's a lot of time.
Yeah, it's a whole beast.
Yeah.
How many people are like on staff at Wildhaven now, and how many consultants do you have?
We run a pretty lean business model, staffing model. I think we have anywhere between, say, 8 and 15 people on staff for the operation side of the business at Sonoma, and it's about the same at Yosemite because it's about the same unit count. So, high season, it might be up to 15 people, and most of that is extra housekeepers. Five of that could be housekeepers. And then we have camp hosts, and we've got maintenance, and we've got guest services team and some management. Those are our departments. And then, yeah, like I said, we try to outsource, keep things as contractors when possible, when we don't need them all the time. And so that's where some of the marketing professionals come in. So it's pretty small operation.
Hello, listeners. This is Sherry Halala, founder of Sage Outdoor Advisory. If you're launching an outdoor hospitality project like glamping, we can help. We offer feasibility studies and appraisals. What that means is we look at your specific market and proposed business offering and complete an in-depth analysis to make sure that your planned business will be profitable. Getting a second opinion on your proposal and forecasted financials is critical to understand before you spend years of your time and hundreds of thousands of dollars. This is particularly important if you are looking to raise money for your project from a bank or private investors. They are going to want to see this type of deep dive analysis from an independent third-party specialist in the industry. We at Sage have completed well over 250 feasibility studies and appraisals in outdoor hospitality in North America in the last 4 years. So we understand what it takes to bring a project from concept to reality. If this sounds like it could be helpful to you, you can go to our website, sageoutdooradvisory.com, and schedule a call with our team. While you're there, check out our proprietary glamping database map too. Thanks. Now back to the show.
How have you balanced hiring housekeeping as internal staff versus outsourcing to like an external contracting group?
We've had that discussion a lot. You pay lower rates if they're in-house, from what we've discovered, versus if you hire a firm to come in or a cleaning crew to come in. And it's just better quality, we believe, if they're in the property every day. They really know your product. They know your accommodations. They know the operations. And so we prefer to have all housekeeping in-house as a tight team that works together, and versus outsourcing that. Now, given that, we do at both properties, outsource the laundry, linen rentals, and the cleaning. So that is done, outside, and we are working on a plan to bring that in-house because it's just more cost effective in the long run, even though it's more expensive up front.
So that would necessitate you bringing, commercial washer and dryers onto the properties, which I assume is what's been prohibitive up to this point.
You got it. Yep. Yeah. You need enough water, enough electricity. You need septic outflow for all the dirty water. You need a place to put it. You don't always have enough space to build it.
I don't know if you have numbers on this, but if you're budgeting in your head, like, hey, we need to outsource cleaning a room or just doing the laundry for it, and we're going to outsource it versus, hey, we're going to do this on site. Do you have like a rough estimate of the cost difference between those two?
The one thing that comes to my head was when we looked at a contract cleaning crew to come in, because in the off season, we only really need to clean tents on, let's say, Sundays. When everyone checks out on Sundays, we need a lot of people there, and then we can leave some tents or cabins dirty during the week that people aren't checking in. So it just does it make sense to have someone full time or even on a limited schedule versus just bringing some professionals in? And I think it was something like 35 an hour versus what we were paying around 20 an hour for our, this is before taxes. So maybe it's 22 or 23 after taxes in, if it's part of our W-2 staff versus, what is that? Almost, 50% more, another $10 more if you have someone come in.
Yeah, pretty significant. I was actually just doing a feasibility study for Homer, Alaska, and I was literally looking up cleaning services to call to try to figure out, how much it would cost. And I couldn't even find any cleaners. I mean, I only got like 2 or 3 to take their call, and they would have had to drive an hour and like charge for that. And I was like, oh man, this is a real issue for this location. Like, they're going to have to hire someone in-house most likely. And then, it's still going to be difficult to hire someone because they're 30 minutes outside of an already small city. So there's
Yeah.
a point of advice for the listeners when you are doing site selection and you are doing your projections. I recommend, trying to call 2, 3, 4 places to see how much, that would cost if you are needing to outsource it. If you don't bring someone in-house at first.
And and I think with the rise of Airbnbs, and they all need cleaning crews. If you're in a market where it's heavy Airbnb, like Mariposa, right outside of Yosemite, those cleaning crews are in demand, and I think making plenty of money from homeowners who just need their services there. So we ran into that in that location.
Yeah, and 35 an hour is not irregular, and even what I was hearing was higher than that in Homer. 35, 45, even 50 an hour per cleaner, which is pretty wild.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So transitioning to Yosemite, how is it that you found that property, and how did that permitting and construction and capital raise go?
That one was another realtor find. We engaged realtors around the state, as I mentioned, and a realtor actually showed us that one before our Healdsburg property, and they were looking to sell, and it was an exorbitant price at the time. And we said, "Oh God, if we only had that money, one day we'd love this property." And then we went back, opened up the Sonoma one, the Healdsburg one in Sonoma County, and then came back after we had some success in our first year. At our first property, we went back to the owners of that property and said, "Hey, we're for real. We have a proof of concept." We invited them to come take a look at it, and then we started negotiating at that point. And we said, what can we do to get into this property? So that one was another lease, and it was, we were able to raise. It was a much bigger amount, but we raised it in. We had a grand vision, but we didn't raise all the money up front to fund that grand vision. We just raised it in, I think, three rounds. So we started off, I think, with just a couple $1 million to get that one going. That was ground up development. So that's where all the money came from. And there's so many studies. I forget if it was $500,000 or something, just in studies that we had to pay for to get the county approvals. And now, so a lot of money goes into the studies that they require, and then you can get approval by fire and by environmental and by water and all the different departments within a county. And then you start, then you have to hire engineers to get the construction plans, and there's a lot of money there, and that takes a lot of time, and you don't want to rush that one because you can overpay. Meanwhile, you have a lease to pay. So there's challenges there. There's conflicting factors in time and cost efficiency. So
So since both properties are leased, are they 30-year leases or what are they? How are they structured?
Yeah. Well, I think one's 25 and the other's 30.
Okay. How did that impact your ability to raise money? Because I would assume, and also backing up from there, do you have an exit strategy, and is there a plan ever to, are you open and interested in selling Wildhaven or selling the locations? And I guess, how did the lease nature of that factor in?
Yeah, it's a fair question, because in a perfect world we would have bought. That's you own your own future. You can also more easily loan against it. You can get certain loans if you own the land. And we knew that, but the lease is less upfront. And so you can start making more money faster, and you can pay off your investors faster. There's a lot of factors. When there is an exit, and we're not sure when that will be or what that will look like, people will, the buyers will have to consider the length of our lease, and, if we can extend that. In one case, we have a first right to purchase. So the exit may involve purchasing that land. And, So that's our plan. We're not sure, as I said, when we might exit, or our goal right now is just to get 3, 5, 7 of these properties up and going and producing great returns for our investors.
I love it. And to chime in for the listeners, so leased land typically will it's harder for an outright sale of a business or a property if it's on a lease, because financial projections look so far into the future, and they also take into account, value in perpetuity of ownership. And 30 years is obviously a lot of time, or 25 years is a lot of time, but in the world of 30-year mortgages and things like that, it can impact a lot. A lot of investors won't consider a property that can only be leased, so it can have some more limiting factors. But like you said, less upfront costs. And how, when you're pitching and raising money for Site 1 and Site 2, what is the pitch to the investors? Is it like, hey, we're expecting these types of returns, and it's more of a monthly or annual return, cash returns that they're going to be getting, and there isn't a long-term view for a big payout to sell, or was that in the investor pitch? I guess how did you structure the investor terms and them getting recouped on their investment and getting returns?
We didn't promise any exit timing or any, guaranteed return. It is a revenue split, for perpetuity, basically. And we did model out and say, okay, this is the expected, internal rate of return for you over 10 years. This is what, as a sum of all the different distributions that we would make. So that's
Okay.
and they looked at that return and they told us kind of what number that they'd like to see, and we, our numbers matched that. And so the investors that were comfortable with that return, that rate of return, they're happy to invest.
What, if you're open to sharing, like, what was the return you were promising or laying out, and like, were you guys able to hit those, or did you fall short, or did it take some time?
Yeah, I don't know the exact number of what was in our first deck, and then how we've updated as revenue has changed. I'm not able to share that one, but it's stayed consistent. It has dropped from our original forecast, because you don't know what you don't know until you start. But the returns have stayed very strong. And we, especially at Yosemite, where we pivoted and we were just going to be an all tent property, sort of like Under Canvas, how they do their model. And now we've pivoted to more cabins, and that has that changed our rates of return, because there's a lot more money up front. So our investment has increased, but the returns now are a little further out, but they're much stronger when we decided to pivot from all tent to tent and cabin.
And is it still the same for Yosemite? Is it, for the investor pitch, is it still a revenue share split? Is that the structure? Okay.
Yeah, it's the same model we used for the first property, because it worked so well. And in the first property, we paid off all of our investors' capital in 23 months or something like that. Oh no, it was a little more than 2 years. So maybe it was about 30 months, like 2.5 years. We were able to pay back all the initial investor capital. It was phenomenal.
Gosh, Ken, you make it look so easy. It's remarkable. I mean, like, what you've done and accomplished is on so many levels is so impressive, and a very difficult thing to do. So I tip my cap to you.
Thank you. And we didn't know it at the time how beneficial it was that we had this closed RV park campground that was just ready to go, and then the timing was in our favor with COVID, and we got lucky. I don't know how to advise that to other people. Go out and get lucky. But we had a lot of things supporting us, and we were smart in how we kind of structured the deal, and how we went. We didn't raise as much as we probably could have. We wanted to do it in rounds. We've been lucky.
This is a little bit of a nuanced question, but is there much difference between setting up the investor payback as a revenue share versus a profit share? And just for the listeners, and I guess to clarify, I mean, a revenue share, in my mind, insinuates that It's basically, the investors are getting paid directly out of the revenue before expenses are deducted, which is a little bit less volatile and uncertain than if they're getting paid after the expenses have been taken out and it's a percentage of the profit.
I misspoke then. It is a profit share for us.
Okay.
It's
Okay.
at the end of the day, after all of our expenses, whatever money is available, we determine, whether we should reinvest it in the business, buy new units, make improvements, or it goes out to the investors. And when it does, it goes out in a split at that point.
Very cool. So for Yosemite, you came out with the phase one, which was the 40 units. You decided to lean more heavily on cabins and go a little bit nicer on the units, and that seemed to be a better long-term play. Higher upfront cost, but better returns in the long run. What was your, did it ever cross your mind to just go only hard-sided and only go cabins? Or, I guess what was the rationale for doing 2 unit types, and the main motivations or pros and cons of that?
We know every property we open is going to be tents and cabins. And the tents may come down in the colder, the off season, and cabins are great for the weather, of course, and for sound insulation when you're near a road, and then just the durability of a cabin. It could last 20 years, just like a home, versus we've already replaced our tents after year 3, a lot of our tents, which was a surprise. So we know we want both. Going all cabins is really cost prohibitive. There's tiny homes we were looking at that were 80, 90, 100,000 each. And that's not even that crazy to say. I'm sure people listening will know that. We were able to find a manufacturer that would custom make exactly what we wanted for a lot less than that if we bought in bulk and we took care of some of the planning. So we were able to buy a little more cabins than we probably could have wanted to afford because we got a lower price. And then they do make, you've I'm sure have lots of data on this, but I don't know, I think I have them priced 150 more or so than our tents. So in the long term, they just make a lot more money. So that's kind of the thinking. And they, with cabins, we have a couple cabins at Yosemite that have lofts, and those have been really popular with families. But then it's also popular with a couple because you just can ignore the loft up. It's up above. And then we have other cabins that were big enough to fit a futon, which then converts to a bed if needed for the kids, or it's just a nice sitting area for the couple. So the cabins do give us a lot more flexibility.
Have you done any financial analysis on, the cost it takes to build and put one, the all-in cost it takes to build and put one tent on site versus the all-in cost to put one cabin, and then, the anticipated or the revenue you make per year on that, and gotten any insights from that type of analysis?
We have done that. And one of our investors asked us, are you sure about the pivot to cabins? What would happen if you just kept it as all tents? And then we did that model. And then what happens if you did 10 cabins, and then the rest tents? And what happens if you did half cabins? And we played around with those numbers, and the mix model won, for us. So we over just all tents. So having some cabins in there was a better return. And we, have we calculated the all-in costs? We know the cost to buy a tent, furnish it, and build a platform. And that, the platform is most of the cost. Well, depending on where you are, if you have to build an extensive platform, ours were, 10 to 15,000 to make a really, really nice, good one. And they can be a lot more depending on how you want it to look. If you're making them like under canvas, a tent and furnishings and a simple frame could be 5,000. So, you add those two together and it could be 20 grand and you have a tent ready to go. can be a lot less if you're putting something just on a flat piece of asphalt and it's just a simple platform.
This is actually a question we dive into with a lot of our clients in the Sage feasibility study, because the point you just hit on is so valid, and that is essentially, a tent with furnishings could be $5,000-$8,000, but the platform could be 15, and that's often the case. And we, especially if you're going to be putting in a bathroom and you're thinking about the infrastructure for the bathroom, and what material are you using? Are you using like composite Trex style material in the decks, or is it cedar or like pine? And have you any lessons learned on deck material?
I don't know exactly. I wish my business partner was here as he managed the construction. I know in our Sonoma property, it was sheets of plywood, and so it was just a one sheet of wood, and then we painted it. And then for Yosemite, we went with more like slats, so it looked a little better and a little more, and I think it was just pressure treated wood. But a lot of it is in, if you have a lot of snowfall, and we do in Yosemite, you need a different support structure. For your fly, if you want it to you don't want your tents to bake in the extreme heat, you want to have some distance between the top of your tent and the fly. And then there's cosmetic, aesthetic reasons that you'd want to do different support structures. And that can cost a lot more. So that's some of the things we've learned.
Those are all great points. And, usually what we tell people when we're looking at numbers for decks is it sounds like you guys are using wood. And usually the numbers that we come up with is almost always like a composite Trex material, which might last 30 plus years, super durable. But it's twice as much for the material cost easily. But then there's wood, which looks really nice in the first few years and is much cheaper. But particularly if it's exposed to sun or rain, it's gonna, start to deteriorate and wear, by year 4, year 5. And it's an interesting trade-off.
Yeah, you're right. And we're about at year 4 or 5 right now. So it'll be, we've had to go back and treat some of our decks, and so we'll see.
Yeah, it's an interesting choice. And for the listeners, maybe if you're trying to get a proof of concept and do things as cheap as possible to get it off the ground, like wood is a great material to get, to raise the money to get the project done, by necessity. And then on the other hand, if you're thinking, all right, we want something that's going to be low maintenance and last 30 years, then maybe, and you have the cash, composite might be a better route. With Yosemite, how was your guys' first year, and what were the differences?
We got a late start. We started only in April, and that was because of all the permitting, construction woes that I mentioned earlier. But when April started, it was packed. May was an amazing month for us. It is in Yosemite, for all the waterfalls. The summer was great. The fall was great, and then it died down a little. But then we had a really surprising holiday season. Didn't know how many people would want to go glamping in Yosemite for Thanksgiving and for New Year's and Christmas Day even. So we had a really strong reaction, and I appreciate you mentioning those reviews at the beginning of the show here, because we're really proud that we're up to 4.8 stars, 117 reviews, and people love especially our views. That's the biggest thing that we've heard from our guests. And it took me a while to realize that most glamping is done on flat ground, and usually there's trees around, just basic, comments here. But that means that you don't usually get the amazing views. And we got a very difficult property. It's a sloping hillside. It was very hard to develop, but it means that we have incredible views. And we border 2,000 acres of protected ranch land to the south of us. So all you do is see beautiful rolling hills, and you can actually see snow-capped peaks in the distance. So that was the thing that people loved about Yosemite that we didn't really even expect.
That's very cool. Um, Amazing. And I guess, was there any, now that you got through the first season, um, are there going to be any big strategic pivots, or, whether it's, operationally with staff or marketing and advertising or just managing? I guess I'll start by saying, how is the seasonality or like customer profile or customer demand different?
From Sonoma, from our first property.
Yeah, correct.
More international. Roughly, strangely, it's about the same length of stay, which I thought would be a lot longer. But yeah, much more, which is around just two nights. Yeah, much more international. So far, it hasn't been as many families. It's been, I think, more couples. Yeah, seasonality, TBD, because we've only had about 8 months or so. I don't quite know when things are going to pick up. There's a big challenge that we face, which is the Yosemite National Park has these entrance pass requirements because it's so popular, and they haven't announced those yet. And that dictates when people can even get a pass to be able to come in. So I think what I'm seeing is that the booking lead time is shrinking, where because people are having to wait to see when they can even get a pass to come in. So in this last summer, the one big thing we did see is I had a ton of bookings that were within 6 days out or 5 days out, whereas at Sonoma, people book a lot sooner. So a lot of last minute bookings.
Yeah, that's super interesting. If you just ask me, what do you think the customer profile is going to be in Sonoma versus Yosemite, I would have thought Yosemite families going to see a national park, camp together, that thing. And I would think Sonoma, wine country, you're not going to bring your kids to go do that.
Yeah.
But it's interesting that it's the opposite.
Yeah, I'm still trying to figure it out. But Sonoma is only an hour and 15 minutes away from the city, and so that one, it's just easy for families to sneak away. And yeah, I'm still trying to figure it out. And as far as pivots, no, I mean, we need to get, after the first year of high expenses, that's my main goal, is just get expenses under control, our main goal. That's the big one. But the operations, keep it going as is. The guest experience is amazing. The property is amazing. We are in the middle of a final raise right now for the property to complete our phase 2. And that one, those funds are going to be going towards, as I said, new units that are higher up in the property, so even better views. And like I said, in-suite bathrooms and bigger cabins that can hold larger families. And then, the big news is we're adding a pool. And we're adding a very big hot tub. And the pool is kind of necessary in the really hot months. Because the tents do get pretty hot, and then the hot tub is really necessary in the cold months when you want to give people another reason to come up. And then we're also adding food service, like a counter style, like a food truck set up, so that people don't have to leave the property to get what they need to eat.
That's big. I'm sure that's going to be huge for you guys in terms of demand and rate increases for both, for all of those, and occupancy.
In occupancy, even if the rates stay the same and just occupancy goes up, because we're more of a full service resort. That would be great for us.
Well, I don't know if I've walked you through the data that we've seen at Sage, but we see that properties that offer a real food and bev service and like hot meals, their rates go up like 70%, just from the data speaking. Now, it's not as simple as you just add food and it works like that, because usually properties that have restaurants are going to be very nice across the board. But the correlation of increased rates with dining service on site is very statistically significant.
Yeah, and our mission from the beginning has just been make it easy to spend a comfortable night outdoors. So that's just one thing we can take off of people's to-do list. If they know they don't have to shop on the way or shop during their trip or keep things in a cooler, let's just want to make it easy. So they just show up with their toothbrush.
Yeah, and I wanted to give you a chance to talk a little bit more about that raise, and share a little bit, particularly if anyone that's a listener would be interested in investing. Like, what does that look like, and yeah, how's it been going? And if someone was interested in investing in the phase 2 expansion of Wildhaven, Sonoma, and Yosemite, what would that look like, or how would they get in touch with you to learn more?
Yeah, I would say just go to the contact us form on wildhavenyosemite.com, and if you're interested, ideally you've done something like this before, and you're comfortable with the risks, and you understand outdoor hospitality, and we can explain how the terms work. It's very similar to how we've done our other raises. We have a great proof of concept. That's the biggest thing right now, and we have we overachieved on our forecast in the first year. We've learned a lot. We know exactly, a better sense of how to set rates and different sources of revenue that we can add that we didn't even know about to start or didn't try. So yeah, that's going to round out this development, and our goal is to build one of the top glamping resorts in North America. And we don't think that's a too ambitious statement to say, because of the property that we have, these 36 acres that are with beautiful views, and the location, and then the variety of accommodations, and kind of the positioning that we have, where it's everything you need to be comfortable, but not nothing too extravagant. We think we can achieve that goal.
I would estimate that this fundraise will probably be, fundraising is never easy, but will probably be your raise with the least friction. And I speak with a lot of people who are looking to launch their first glamping concept, and most people who are getting into glamping don't have any past experience with it or track record of success in glamping. Almost everybody, and so it's so the first property in a new space with a new operator who hasn't done it before it's a really hard road to raise money. You're really asking for a lot of faith from people, and it's about as high risk as it gets, unless they're collateralized with the property or something like that. It's super high risk. And so we often recommend people to get a proof of concept with 2 to 10 units, show that it's working, show that you're getting revenue projections, and then that makes it easier. And then the second piece is, having a stabilized property at 40 units and, a devout customer base or social media traction. And then if you're looking to launch a second property, it's so much easier to raise money, because you can say, hey, look, we did it once, we can do it again, and here's all the things we've learned to make it even better. Yeah. And then on top of that, you guys already have the Yosemite deal worked out. All the uncertainty of costs of developments and permitting is done. It's behind you. You've substantiated demand with your first 40 units. And so like a phase 2 investment opportunity on your second property, with 50,000 followers on Instagram and a really strong first season, from an investor perspective, that's about as low risk as you can get in the glamping space for an investment. So I have high hopes for your guys' ability to raise the money you need. I guess, do you have any comments on that evolution and how fundraising has been at each of those stages, or how it's changed?
First of all, thank you for saying that. That's how we feel right now. We've the 5 years behind us, and everything we've learned, and the markets we've chosen, and so we think this should be a very attractive opportunity to people. We haven't changed much in how we've done our fundraising, so we feel pretty good about how we've laid out our operating agreements and our profit shares, and how we involve our investors and how we don't involve them, and how they can trust us now to see that we actually do repay our capital, sometimes faster than anticipated. So yeah, we think we have the right things in place, and we're just looking for this final amount, which we knew we needed from the beginning, but we just didn't want to, call it before we needed it. And so we're hoping it's just going to be most of our same investors that want to reinvest.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I imagine you'll have a lot of success with that.
Thank you.
And yeah, I mean, if I had cash laying around, I would very seriously be thinking about putting it in myself.
Well, thank you,
But
Connor.
I will spread the word. I think I know a couple people who might be interested. And what's the future of Wildhaven look like? Where do you hope to be 5 years from now? What's next?
For the brand Wildhaven, we would love to have two or three more properties running. We have to probably get those. We're looking right now. We're actively looking. We've done site visits. We're doing all the due diligence and forecasting. So we need to acquire the properties and then start the permitting and then start construction so that two or three more of these can be operating within the next 5 years. We're looking, ideally we'd love to be in California, but just because, it'd be nice there's so much to do here. There's 45 million people or something like that. That's a perfect state. It has a longer season, despite all of the red tape. But we are looking on the East Coast where we have one iron in the fire in the Caribbean, believe it or not. We're looking around to see where there's demand, where people are already traveling and they just want an outdoor hospitality experience versus the typical hotel.
So if someone had a property that they think could be good for glamping, or maybe someone had a glamping dream, and then they've run into either fundraising or a different issue that's causing them to not do it, but maybe they have a piece of land. Should they reach out to you about that if there was either an outright sale of the land or a partnership JV on that land?
Absolutely. That's something we would love to do. It streamlines a lot for both parties. We were just talking with someone recently who had a property and they run into a funding problem, and we're now chatting with them to see if we can jump in to help. That would be ideal if it was already permitted or if it was through that permitting stage. But that would be great for us. Yeah, we'd love to hear about ideas.
And are you offering any either management consulting or either like strategic consulting and glamping or management services through the Wildhaven brand at all, like third-party management?
Not yet, but we have been speaking about at what point will we be ready to offer operating services, basically management services for other glamping resorts. We are doing some small scale consulting for people who have asked us either to help us, how do you raise money? Because we've been successful there. What does an investment deck look like? To, how do you choose the accommodation mix and the pricing and the amenities, and how do you set up the brand, and what are some of the expenses, which we have more experience than a lot of people when it comes to actual glamping expenses. So we've been doing a little consulting there, and we are open to that.
Amazing. Well, man, there's been so much good advice and insights in here. Your journey's been pretty miraculous and successful. So I'm super happy for you, and thanks for opening it up and sharing it with people. I feel like I've just grilled you with question after question, so I appreciate you being a sport. I did want to end on like maybe a fun question because we talk so much about the business stuff, but I guess one would be like, what's your favorite thing to do on either of your properties, or like a favorite moment spending time on the properties? And then do you have a favorite outdoor hobby or outdoor trip coming up that you get really excited about?
At Sonoma, we have such a beautiful stretch of the Russian River that we have private access to. It's very hard to have river access where we are, and that's what our guests come for in the kind of May through October river months. So my favorite thing to do there is we rent inner tubes for our guests. We're going to take one of the inner tubes. You can walk up to the upriver part of our property, drop in on an inner tube, and you just float down this lazy river all the way down to the end of our property. You get out and you walk and you do it again. And it's what a lot of people love to do, families, couples, anyone. So that's my favorite Sonoma summertime activity, is the lazy inner tube float. And at Yosemite, it's just the views. It's just these sunset views. We face south and west, and there's nothing blocking us in that direction. And you have actually really amazing sunrise views. You see the whole spectrum of it. It sets, you're up high on a hill. So it's just to be up at this, what we call our pergola at the top of the property. We have a gas fire pit going, and then watch the sunset. As far as upcoming, I have my next trip is to the Cancun area. I'm just a big fan of tropical water and tropical scenery and just that tropical lifestyle. So my wife and I are going to a little island off of Cancun and just going to kind of swim in the water in the months that are cold here in Sonoma County.
Wow. Ah, Ken, thank you so much. What a treat.
Thanks for inviting me. This was fun.
Yeah, well, we'll have to have another episode, maybe a year out and get the updates because you're moving fast and making a lot of progress quickly.
I would love to. I'd love to. And for anyone listening, come check out Wildhaven. I wouldn't be a marketer if I didn't end with mention that plug that if you're always curious what glamping's like, I think we're a great place to start. If sometimes there's two people where one loves camping, the other has never done it before, and we're a good spot to test it out. If you're a remote worker, we've had a lot of remote workers decide to come up and stay with us and use our Wi-Fi and basically get paid to be outdoors, to work outdoors. And then, if you have a group, we've had a lot of groups lately that have rented out 20 of our tents and cabins or rented out our whole property for a wedding or a wellness retreat or a corporate getaway, or we actually have a bar mitzvah coming up that rented out the whole place. So if you have a group that wants a good place to get outdoors, I think we're a good spot for that too.
Love it. So the best way for someone to get in touch with you is to go to your website and just fill out the contact form or get the email that's listed on the website.
Yep. Wildhaven. We have two different sites right now, wildhavensonoma.com for that property and wildhavenyosemite.com. So one of those two sites.
Okay, terrific. And it's absolutely just silly that I haven't been to either of your properties yet.
Why, Connor?
It's a total lapse of judgment on my part. I will be down in Sacramento at the end of March, so maybe we could coordinate for us to drop by and finally see it.
That would be cool. That would be great. That's right in the middle of both of our properties.
Amazing. All right, thanks, Ken. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Connor. Appreciate the time.